As the moving truck pulled away, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake, the last thing I expected to see was my mother-in-law, Marjorie, stepping out with a suitcase and a smug smile. "Hope you don't mind, dear, but I decided to move in." I stood frozen in disbelief as Marjorie strode up the front walkway of our new home, as if she owned the place. Just moments ago, Theo and I were kissing passionately, thrilled to finally move into our dream home after years of scrimping and saving. Now his mother was on our doorstep, suitcase in hand, ready to crash the party. "Surprise!" Marjorie sang, breezing past me into the foyer. "Theo, be a dear and get my bags." I followed her inside, watching in shocked silence as Theo happily carried in her luggage. "Isn't this great, babe?" He grinned. "Mom's going to live with us? Now you'll have help around the house." My hands clenched into fists. I had explicitly told Theo I did not want his mother moving in with us. We had gone over this. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Can I talk to you for a minute, Theo?" I said tightly, pulling him into the kitchen. Marjorie was already making herself at home, inspecting the rooms. "This is our first day in our new home," I hissed. "You can't just invite someone to live with us without asking me." Theo waved a hand. "Oh, come on, it's just my mom. She's excited about the new place, too. Don't worry about it." I stared at him in disbelief. "Worry about it? This is unacceptable, Theo. We've talked about this. I don't want anyone else living here." Theo's smile faded, his eyes flashing. "Well, I already told Mom she could stay. And as the man of the house, it's my decision." He turned and strode out of the room, leaving me speechless. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the anger and anxiety churning inside me. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. Theo and I were supposed to celebrate our beautiful new home together. Instead, his mother had swooped in uninvited, acting like she owned the place. And Theo, as usual, refused to take my concerns seriously. I found Marjorie in the guest bedroom, critically eyeing the freshly painted walls. "Well, I suppose this will have to do," she sniffed. "Though the lighting isn't ideal." "Theo said I could have this room, yes?" My fingernails dug into my palms. I forced a tight smile. "Marjorie, this isn't a good time." Theo and I weren't prepared. Marjorie cut me off with an icy stare. "Why?" "Because I didn't ask your permission." She let out a grating laugh. "You forget, my son owns this house, too. I have as much right to be here as you do." Hot anger flared through me. How dare she? I opened my mouth to respond, but she breezed past me, calling for Theo. I stood alone in the guest room, shocked and enraged, making my hands tremble. This was supposed to be my haven, my refuge. Instead, Theo's mother had invaded and stuck her flag in the soil. A war was coming, and I refused to surrender. The next morning, I shuffled bleary-eyed to the kitchen to make my usual pot of dark roast. To my surprise and irritation, Marjorie had beaten me there. "Well, good morning, sunshine," she crowed, wafting the bitter smell of her weak tea my way. "I made breakfast for my two favorite people. Dig in." I stared at the sad spread on the counter, limp bacon, rubbery eggs, and some species of grain mush. Theo ambled in, hair sticking up every which way. "Thanks, Ma," he said through a mouthful of food. "This is awesome." I poured myself a strong coffee. "I have an early meeting. I need to get ready." As I dressed for work, I fumed over Marjorie's nerve. This was my kitchen, not hers. And that breakfast. A toddler could have done better. At least at the office, I could have some peace. After an endless day of meetings, I arrived home bone-tired, wanting nothing more than a hot bath. But when I walked into the bedroom, I stopped short. Marjorie had completely rearranged the furniture and hung heavy drapes that blocked out the warm afternoon light. This was my sanctuary, my space. How dare she? I marched out to the patio, where I could hear Theo and his mother chatting. "Marjorie, you can't just rearrange our bedroom without asking," I said sharply. Theo glanced up from his beer. "Oh, yeah, Mom helped me move some things around so she could set up her sewing area." I froze. "For what?" "For my quilting, dear." Marjorie gave me a patronizing smile. "Don't worry." I left room for the bed. You set up your sewing equipment in our bedroom?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Do you understand how inappropriate that is?" "Oh, honestly, Alara," Marjorie sniffed. "It's just a room. No need to be so territorial." "Right, Theo." "She's got a point, babe." Theo took a nonchalant swig of beer, ignoring my reddening face. I was literally speechless with rage. This was absolutely the last straw. I retreated to the kitchen before I could say something I'd regret. We needed to have a serious talk about finances tonight, whether Theo wanted to or not. His spendthrift habits and the falling stock market had me worried about money for the first time. Over dinner, I broached the subject as diplomatically as I could. "Theo, I think we should go over our budget tonight. Between the house and Marjorie, expenses seem high." Theo waved his fork dismissively. "Our finances are fine, babe. I make good commissions." "Even so, we made a plan." "For heaven's sake, Alara, stop nagging the boy," Marjorie interrupted. "We're having a nice dinner." I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth hurt. "I need to know where we stand, Theo. We're not kids anymore. We can't just spend recklessly. Let's sit down tonight and enough." Theo snapped, banging his fist on the table. I jumped. Marjorie looked smug. Anger burned in Theo's eyes as he glowered at me. "I'm in control of the finances here. All you need to worry about is keeping house and looking pretty." His lip curled in a sneer. "Understood." My heart pounded as we stared at each other. Without a word, I stood, grabbed my keys, and walked out, his mocking laughter echoing behind me. I drove around for hours trying to calm down before finally heading home. The lights were off when I crept in, except for the flickering blue glow of the television. I hoped Theo had gone to bed, but when I passed by the living room, I saw his silhouette still reclined in his armchair. "There you are," he said gruffly. "Come watch this show with me." I hesitated, still upset from our argument. "It's late. I should get some sleep." Theo clicked off the TV and swiveled to face me, his eyes drilling into mine. "We need to talk." I braced myself for another fight as I perched on the couch. Theo templed his fingers, staring at me ominously. "I've been thinking," he said. "You've been very selfish lately." My mouth fell open. "Selfish? How could you say?" He held up a hand. "Hear me out. We have this beautiful new home now, yet all you do is complain. My mother is here out of the kindness of her heart, but instead of being grateful, you whine about finances that are under control." He leaned forward. "It's disruptive and disrespectful." I blinked rapidly, outraged he was twisting this around on me. "Theo, I've supported you in everything, including buying this house to stretch ourselves thin. But I'm worried now. We never see eye to eye on money, in between Marjorie interfering in everything." Theo's fist crashed down on the side table, making me jump. "That's exactly what I mean. My mother has done nothing but help since she arrived, and I've told you I'm handling finances." He rose from the chair, looming over me. "I'm losing patience here, Alara. This arrangement clearly isn't working for you." His eyes bored into mine. "So let's make something very clear. I am head of this household. You will show me respect, and you will accept my decisions, including my mother living here. Understood?" I stared up at him, my heart pounding. I wanted to scream at him, but the cold look in his eyes frightened me. Jaw clenched, I managed a terse nod. Seemingly satisfied, Theo stalked off to bed. I remained frozen on the couch, adrenaline coursing through me. Only when I heard his rumbling snores echo from down hall did I allow angry tears spill down my cheeks. How had my marriage deteriorated into this? Theo had never spoken to me that way before, so aggressive and intimidating. I thought of Marjorie's smug face at dinner and my hands curled into fists. This was all her influence. She was poisoning Theo against me. I was sure of it. That horrible woman had infiltrated my home, destroyed my sanctuary, turned my life upside down. In that moment, the last shreds of love I had for my husband seemed to shrivel up inside me. As I crept off to bed alone, steeling myself against his blistering snores, the beginnings of a plan took root in my mind. If Theo refused to choose me over his toxic mother, then I would choose myself. It was time to take back control of my life, no matter what it took. Marjorie Jennings may have won this battle by cunning and manipulation, but I would win the war. Over the next few days, I walked on eggshells around Theo, keeping my head down. Let him think I was cowed. Behind the scenes, I began preparations for my escape. I called my lawyer and filed a quitclaim for the new house, securing my partial ownership. It had been a battle to get Theo to even put my name on the deed. Little did he know that decision would come back to bite him. Next, I secretly contacted a forensic accountant, giving her access to all our financial records. 2 days later, she confirmed my worst fears. Theo had drained most of our savings into risky investments. We owed nearly double our income in credit card debt. And if his commissions stopped flowing like they had been, we'd be bankrupt within 6 months. My hands shook with anger and vindication as I emailed the evidence to myself. No wonder Theo refused to discuss money. He knew this house of cards could implode any day. I had been pleading with him for years to budget better. Now we were on the brink of financial ruin, all because of his arrogance. That night, over another miserable dinner, I decided to make one last appeal. Theo, I saw the statements, I said quietly. We're in serious trouble. We need to come up with a plan. Theo's face darkened. Have you been snooping behind my back? I'm trying to help, I cried. We could lose everything. How dare you go over my head? He rose slowly. Marjorie watched avidly. After everything I provide, this is the thanks I get? I shrank back, but stood my ground. We can fix this, Theo, together. If you'll just listen. Theo flung his plate aside with a crash. Get out! I froze. What? His fists clenched, eyes wild. You heard me. Get out of my house. I backed away, heart hammering. This wasn't the man I loved. Without looking back, I fled upstairs, threw essentials into a suitcase, and locked myself in the bathroom, listening to Theo raging below as Marjorie attempted to soothe him. After an hour had passed, I crept downstairs to the darkened house. Slipping out the front door, I started my car and drove off into the night, resolved more than ever to take Theo down. I had tried being reasonable, I had pleaded, begged for compromise, but the time for talking was done. Over the next 2 days at a hotel, paid in cash, I met again with my lawyer and set things in motion. Using Theo's credit card information, I hired an investigator to dig deeper. What she uncovered made me sick. He had a whole second life hidden away. Mistresses, illegitimate debts, shady business dealings he'd kept hidden even from Marjorie. My heart turned to ice. This man was a stranger to me now, but he had crossed the wrong woman. Theo had no idea what was coming for him when those divorce papers hit. And Marjorie! I hoped she enjoyed the view from atop her high horse because I was about to take her down too, once and for all. The battle lines were drawn and I was playing for blood. After a week holed up in the hotel finalizing my plans, I knew I couldn't hide forever. It was time to return home and set the next phase in motion. I rehearsed what I would say countless times on the drive back. I had to get in, act normal, and get out again without raising suspicions. Quietly, I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. Voices rang out from the kitchen. Before I could sneak past, Marjorie appeared, blocking my path. Well, look who finally decided to show up, she snapped. Behind her, I could see Theo at the table refusing to look at me. I stood taller, just picking up a few things. Then I'll be on my way. As I tried to brush past her, Marjorie grabbed my arm. I don't think so. Time for a little chat, girly. Shaking her off, I retreated to the bedroom with Marjorie on my heels. As I shoved clothes into a bag, she cornered me, arms crossed. Let me make something abundantly clear, she hissed, jabbing her finger at me. You will stop this childish tantrum nonsense and return home where you belong. My son has supported you long enough while you repay him with deceit. Adrenaline flooded my veins. I stepped closer until we were nose to nose. You don't scare me, I said through gritted teeth. This is still my house, too. Now get out of my way. I tried to push past her, but Marjorie shoved me backwards as hard as she could. I crashed painfully against the wall, bruising my shoulder. Shock reverberated through me. She had assaulted me in my own home. At that moment, something inside me snapped. This vile woman had taken everything from me, my dignity, my home, my marriage. Enough was enough. I want you out, I said, my voice dangerous and low. You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave this house. Marjorie's eyes widened in outrage. How dare you? Theo, she screeched. Did you hear how she spoke to me? Heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. Before Theo could appear, I stepped forward until Marjorie had to crane her neck to look up at me. If you ever touch me again, I will have you arrested, I promised. You've overstayed your welcome. Get out now! Theo arrived at the doorway. When he heard Marjorie's wild accusations of my behavior, his face mottled red with fury. He seemed ready to explode. But before he could speak, I met his bulging eyes. We need to discuss some things, privately. My voice was steel. With a huff, Marjorie stormed off. I could hear drawers slamming violently from down the hall as she packed. Meanwhile, Theo eyed me with clenched fists. I had to tread carefully like defusing a bomb. In as calm a voice as I could muster, I issued an ultimatum. I am moving forward with a divorce. You will communicate through my lawyer from now on. Theo's mouth fell open. You spiteful be asterisk 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 asterisk, he snarled. You'll regret this. He turned and slammed his fist into the wall with a sickening crack. I didn't even flinch. Send your threats to my legal team, I replied coolly before breezing past him with head held high. The plan was in motion. My counterattack had begun. Soon I heard Marjorie's muffled weeping as Theo consoled her. But I felt nothing at all. That bridge had been burned to ash a long time ago. Now all that was left was to raze Theo's house down upon him and salt the earth besides. This was only the beginning. The divorce papers were delivered to Theo's office 2 days later. Within hours, the furious calls and emails started lighting up my phone. I ignored them all, letting them pile up. Finally, he resorted to showing up unannounced at my hotel. When I opened the door to his red, sweaty face, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction at catching him so off guard. You think you can blindside me like this? Theo raged. I won't sign anything until we talk, alone. There's nothing left to say. It's over. Theo forced his way in, knocking the doorstop aside. I retreated to keep distance between us, poised to call security. I know you set me up somehow, Theo hissed, prowling closer. There's no way you uncovered all that other stuff legally. I scoffed. Don't like seeing your dirty secrets on full display? Get out of my room! Dirty secrets? Theo bellowed, flecks of spit flying. You mean hard choices I made to support our lifestyle after you chose a dead-end career? His hypocrisy stoked my fury. I told you over and over we were headed towards disaster, but all you ever cared about was stroking your own ego. I stepped closer, glaring into his eyes. You reap what you sow. Consider this your wake-up call. With a guttural cry, Theo kicked over a chair. Do you realize what you've done? My mother, in hysterics. My bosses, furious. You've destroyed my life, you deceitful be asterisk 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 asterisk. His verbal assault escalated to new, venomous heights, but I stood rooted in place. His insults and accusations washed over me, helpless to penetrate the ice around my heart. Part of me pitied this broken man, crumbling before my eyes, his empire of lies collapsing all at once. But a bigger part felt victorious. When Theo finally paused his tirade, shoulders heaving, I spoke calmly. I did warn you, over and over, but you didn't listen. I held his gaze steadily. I had no choice but to take drastic steps. You'll come out of this better for it someday. Theo glared at me with raw hatred, twisting his features into a monstrous mask. In a low, quaking voice, he vowed bloody revenge, promised to fight me till the bitter end. But I saw the fear swirling in his eyes. Theo was out of allies, resources, and options. His downfall was sealed. With immense satisfaction, I watched Theo's hulking form retreat from the room, broken and diminished. The hotel door had barely shut behind him before I allowed a triumphant smile. Theo could kick and scream all he wanted now. He was a declawed beast without refuge, and I would show no mercy. In the following days, Theo's rare moments of lucidity were eclipsed by endless, vitriolic voicemails, but he remained all bluster and no substance now. When I spoke to my lawyer, she confirmed Theo had signed the divorce papers with surprisingly little resistance. He knew full well the skeletons I could expose and had wisely folded. Checkmate! After everything I endured silently for so long, Theo's downfall felt gratifying and just. I watched with vindication as the life he had built through lies and manipulation fell away in tatters. Let him finally learn what rock bottom feels like. And his enabling mother now forced to face consequences too. Just desserts indeed. The hard part was over now. My new life and hard-won freedom awaited. With the divorce finalized, I wasted no time enacting the next phase of my plan. While Theo spiraled into depression, I was energized, seizing back control of my future. First things first, I needed to cut remaining ties by selling our house immediately. The housing market was still hot and I knew exactly how to leverage that. I hired the best agent, ordered fancy staging, and listed the property at a premium. When Theo caught wind I was selling his precious house out from under him, the raging emails resumed. But it was too late. Without the means to retaliate further, he was neutered. To my immense satisfaction, a bidding war erupted the first week and I soon had an excellent offer in hand. I scheduled the close date as soon as possible, wanting to salt the earth here for good. On moving day, I stopped by one last time to ensure Theo was fully out. The sight inside turned my stomach. Garbage cluttered the floors, holes gaped in the drywall, mirrors and windows were smashed. My beautiful home utterly destroyed out of spite. There in the wreckage stood Marjorie, hunched and unkempt, boxing a few last items. At the sight of me, her red-rimmed eyes flashed with impotent rage. How could you do this to my son? She croaked. He loved you. I felt only icy pity for this fated woman before me. Your son made his own poor choices, now he finally faces consequences. Gesturing at the destruction surrounding us, I added, though clearly still some growing up to do. Marjorie sniffed with disdain. We should have turned you out on the street years ago, you ungrateful leech. Theo always deserved better than the likes of you. Her delusion was almost impressive. I stepped forward and spoke slowly so she would absorb every word. I earned every dollar that bought this house. Your son pillaged our finances without consulting me. I owe him nothing, but he'll owe me for a long, long time. Leaving Marjorie gaping in shock, I strode outside, where the buyers awaited, delightedly oblivious to the drama this house had weathered. As I handed over the keys, relief washed over me. What rotten memories lingered in these walls were Theo's burden now. I was free. Over the next year, I focused fully on advancing my career, rebuilding my credit, and nurturing new friendships. When news filtered back about Theo losing his lucrative job or Marjorie shuttering her home to move into a trailer, I felt only grim satisfaction at the domino effect catching up to them. Soon the settlement money trickled in. Combined with the house profits, I now had ample savings stashed away safely in my name only. Theo and Marjorie's financial security, by contrast, was shredded beyond repair through their own short-sighted hubris. I still look back those painful years with Theo as a valuable awakening. No longer do I suppress my own needs to pacify others. I refuse to dim my light so weaker souls feel less threatened. The timid girl who silently endured Theo's cruelty died the day I walked out for good. She was reborn strong, steady, and proud. While Theo spirals ever downward, haunted by his folly, I thrive. And whenever frustration or doubt creep in, I need only conjure Marjorie's stunned expression when I handed over the house keys. Hard-won justice at long last served sweet. The wounds have healed. I stand tall, renewed. The best revenge indeed. 2 years after walking out, I hardly recognize the timid, browbeaten woman I once was. I stand taller now, empowered, reveling in newfound independence. While my wounds have healed, Theo and Marjorie continue unraveling. With his reputation and finances in tatters, Theo could barely afford the court-ordered alimony. It was pitiful yet fitting how small he became in the wake of destruction left by his ego. No sympathy for me, though. He was captain of that sinking ship. Last I heard, Marjorie's mental state was deteriorating rapidly. Her golden child son reduced to deadbeat status. Karma, indeed. From her daughter, I learned Marjorie was forced to abandon her planned retirement village lifestyle due to Theo's financial crash. Instead, she lives isolated and tortured by bitterness. I won't lie. This news elicited grim satisfaction after years enduring Marjorie's relentless meddling and cruelty. Her entitled dreams torn asunder. Long overdue penance earned. As for me, I reveled in new liberations. I soon sold my small flat and purchased a light-filled house closer to the city. I converted the third bedroom to a sleek home office befitting my recent promotion. Weeknights over wine, friends now fill rooms once occupied by Theo and Marjorie's swelling discontent. Their ghosts long banished from my blossoming sanctuary. This new chapter filled rapidly with travel adventures, gallery openings, and cherished loved ones. My only lingering regret: wasted years pandering to ego's best forgotten. Never again! With the last divorce check deposited, I gained full closure on that old life chapter. No loose ends! No lingering what-ifs! Only blue skies ahead! Pride swelled in my chest as I stood smiling before my new travel-inspired mural-clutching signed divorce papers. Self-reclaimed on my own terms and joyfully beholden to none. Solvency restored. Circle of supportive friends thriving. Career zenith reached and counting. Marjorie would choke if she saw me now. But thoughts of her no longer elicit even ripples of emotion. I heard through the grapevine she languishes in her daughter's crowded basement now, the once regal matriarch reduced to pathetic freeloader. And Theo, he careens ever faster towards rock-bottom fate carved by his own hands. My lawyer keeps me informed of his periodic legal requests for more divorce settlement funds. Requests promptly rejected. I owe that man nothing but life lessons learned. Tonight friends are coming over to toast my 38th birthday and new memoir draft completion. This home overflows with hard-won fruits of my labor alone now. No one permitted to harvest unearned. As I take one final gratified look in the hallway mirror, I muse over all who declared me the jealous failed opportunist riding Theo's coattails. How satisfying to now stand wholly self-made and empowered in my dream home, financially secure and surrounded by authentic loved ones. My only concern? Perfecting the birthday cake recipe. Oh, crash! A loud noise rang out and I immediately rushed to the living room. There, I found my mother-in-law Abigail, breaking dishes. My name is Sophia. I live with my husband William. We met in college, dated through our student years, and got married a little while after graduation. We rented an apartment for just the two of us, but Abigail often came over uninvited. Abigail, what are you doing? Yet again, she had shown up without warning, and for some reason, she was smashing our plates. I made her stop and asked why. These cheap dishes aren't fit for a meal. That was her explanation? Breaking our plates for that reason? It's our business what kind of plates we use, isn't it? But Abigail insisted that the kind of plates we used revealed our financial situation. It seemed like Abigail was eager to label me as poor. Sure, I didn't come from a wealthy family, but that doesn't mean I should be looked down upon. What's with that look? You got a problem? Abigail openly showed her anger towards me. Once, I had tried to stand up to her and had received a lecture lasting over 3 hours, so now, I couldn't bring myself to confront her. In the end, we settled it by agreeing to buy better plates. Is that what happened? While cleaning up the broken plates, my husband William came home. William usually takes my side, even he thinks Abigail's behavior is out of line. Yet, he can't stand up to her either. Abigail had been a strict person since he was young, and it got worse after his father passed away. I wonder if the family gathering next weekend will be alright. I hope Mom doesn't go overboard. Yes, a family gathering is planned for next weekend at my in-laws' house. We were worried that Abigail might give us a hard time there too. So, that's how we went into the family gathering full of apprehension. Welcome, you poor thing! As expected, Abigail threw those words at me as soon as I arrived. The family gathering had just begun, and let me tell you, Abigail was out for blood. She went on and on about how poor people like me have no basic table manners or any sense of proper dining, adequate. She made it her mission to embarrass me in front of everyone. William tried to come to my defense, but Abigail wasn't having any of it. She continued her verbal assault. There I was, at my in-laws' family gathering, still on the receiving end of Abigail's nastiness. What a poor woman she is! The moment she said this, the room went silent, and it felt like my mother-in-law had lost it all. I had had enough. I stood up in the middle of the family gathering. Everyone looked shocked. Abigail was quick to speak. Sophia, where do you think you're going? We're in the middle of a family gathering. Hearing this, my irritation reached its peak. I finally snapped back at her. I can't dine with someone as uncouth as you, Abigail. The room buzzed with whispers. Abigail's face turned beet red. She then loudly berated me. How dare you? You're just my son's wife, how insolent! Family members tried to calm her down, but Abigail was unstoppable. Clearly, my defiance had struck a nerve. William also looked visibly disgruntled by her behavior. Being the wife of my son means you're here to be harassed by me, especially when you're poor. It's unthinkable to stand up to me. Abigail seemed to be living in her own world, pushing her so-called common sense onto everyone else. I thought just because it's your common sense doesn't mean it's everyone else's, you know. It's pretty telling how she's lived her life. If she can't even understand that simple fact. As I was getting ready to leave, Abigail tried to stop me. Wait, you can do. I'm not done making you miserable. Is she serious? Even in this situation, she still wants to continue tormenting me? She is so insensitive that it's gone beyond infuriating, it's downright baffling. Family members tried to rein in the irate Abigail, but she wouldn't stop. Then Abigail, as if she had done nothing wrong, blurted out, "Come on, she's a gold digger who married William." A thief! So anything goes, right? A thief? Me? What on earth is she accusing me of? When did I ever steal from her? To call someone poor and then to label them a thief, she's truly a rude person. Apparently, Abigail sensed my discontent and let me have it again. What's that look for? Don't joke with me. You call me vulgar and then act like you're the victim? I mean, if it's vulgar, it's vulgar. The way she openly demeans people in a room full of family? What else would you call it? Even now, so far relatives tried to calm Abigail down, but she showed no signs of stopping. In fact, she was berating those trying to stop her. It's no wonder the relatives are starting to get fed up. You, the poor one, give William back. You're the reason he left. As Abigail ranted, she seemed to increasingly blame me for her grievances. She seemed to think it's my fault that William left. Mom, that's an unfair accusation. William tried to refute her, but Abigail wasn't listening. You're being deceived by her. She's gonna take everything from you. If William himself is denying it and she's still not listening, then there is really nothing that can be done. Enough is enough. A loud voice cut through. I turned to see it was one of the relatives. They seemed quite angry that Abigail had ruined what was supposed to be a family gathering. Even after being scolded, Abigail wasn't backing down. Why am I the one getting blamed, Dad? She's the bad one. This irrational grudge is getting tiresome. It's not like I did anything wrong. The relatives continued. By any logic, you're the one at fault for causing this chaos. Yeah, exactly. I felt comforted as more people began to side with me. Even Abigail seemed to start feeling cornered. What's wrong with you all? I'm not the bad one. Do you understand the pain of having your son taken away? But we have been saying it's not like that. Wouldn't clinging to your parents' home even in your 40s and 50s be more troubling? It's about time you understood that eventually everyone has to leave the nest. Finally, the relatives spoke in unison. Get out! You're ruining this. They tried to eject Abigail from the family gathering. I hadn't wanted it to go this far, but it seems they couldn't tolerate her ruining the long-awaited reunion. The look on everyone's faces was one of sheer anger. Certainly taken aback, Abigail started saying some unbelievable things. Enough already, William! Divorce this woman right away! Whoa, what? How did divorce suddenly become the topic? She's the one in the wrong and yet she's directing malice towards us? She really should stop. It's because of a woman like her that everyone's mad at me. She's the root of all of this. She brings bad luck. Now she's calling me a bringer of bad luck? How many derogatory terms does she have in her vocabulary? I'm starting to get curious. But honestly, listening to any more of this will just make me angry. I have got to put a stop to this soon. Abigail, just give it up. You better leave before you make things worse. As soon as I said that, Abigail started yelling again. What? This is my house. You should be the one to leave. You never should have married William. Divorce him. At this point, there's no room for constructive dialogue, that's what I thought. I really didn't want to do this, but I have no other option. After confirming with William and getting his permission, I revealed a secret to Abigail. All right, Abigail, I'm going to stop the monthly payments to your family. Are you okay with that? The room went dead silent for a moment. Ha! Finally, Abigail murmured, clearly not understanding what I was saying. What? The payment? Isn't that something William is handling? You have no right to interfere. Abigail seemed to be misunderstanding. The truth is, it was not William but me who had been sending money to the family each month. I own a couple of small businesses, you see. The profits from those are what I have been sending to you, but after today, I can't let your behavior slide, so the payments stop. Upon hearing this, Abigail's face quickly turned pale. Her face has gone from red to pale. She's having a busy day, isn't she? Wait, no one told me about this. You've been sending money? What about William's job? Turns out, Abigail didn't even know that William had quit his job a while back to focus on housework. Focusing on harassing me, she didn't even know about her own son's situation. Beyond disbelief, it's just pitiful. Seems like Abigail realized she's in hot water and started asking William for help. William, do something, convince this woman. Abigail clung to William, but William pushed her away. Mom, you've been rude to Sophia considering all that's happened. Isn't this kind of deserved? William seemed quite angry about how I'd been treated until now, perhaps hurt by her son's defiance. Abigail began to cry. Don't say that, convince Sophia for me. No matter what she said, William's answer was no. He had already warned Abigail repeatedly not to mistreat me, but she never listened. Only asking for help when you're in a tight spot won't fly. Then Abigail started asking the relatives at the venue for help. Everyone, did you hear that? This strict daughter-in-law will stop sending me money. I won't be able to make ends meet. Isn't that awful? Desperate times call for desperate measures, it seems. It's a display of tenacity. However, just like William, the relative said, it's your own fault, you're responsible and didn't take Abigail's side. Abigail looked desperate, but she still had the energy to angrily retort, "How cold-hearted! I'm in a difficult situation and not a single one of you will help." It seems the relatives had something to say too. "Abigail, did you ever help us when we were in trouble?" Faced with that, Abigail was speechless. Apparently, she had never done such a thing. "You even mocked us, let alone help." "We have no intention of helping someone like that." It looked like the relatives held quite a grudge against Abigail too. "I always thought her personality would make her many enemies, but I never imagined not a single relative would be on her side." "It's ironic." "Don't say that. I'll help you from now on. Just help me this once." Abigail tried to cling to the relatives, but everyone looked annoyed. "Well, of course, only asking for help when it suits you and crying while doing it, that's obviously annoying." Not a single voice said that they would help Abigail, only those who pushed her away. Eventually, Abigail started lashing out unfairly at the whole family. "What a bunch of jerks! I have been begging here. The least you could do is help me out." "Really? Maybe if you had helped others before, you wouldn't be in this spot." This endless shifting of blame. She's probably spent her whole life acting this way. Finally, she started berating me again. "Sophia keeps sending me money. Divorce, fine, but the money has to keep coming. What an unreasonable demand. There's no way I could agree to that." Hearing this, family members and even William spoke up. "That's way too much even for you." Stunned, Abigail responded, "What? It's not my fault. Sophia is the one to blame." She kept repeating her claim. I'm amazed she can still say that after making everyone so angry. Soon, the atmosphere shifted towards kicking Abigail out. Cornered at the entrance, she protested. "Wait, this is my house. Why should I be kicked out?" Ignoring her, everyone pushed Abigail out of the door. "You are a nuisance. Just go away already." With that, Abigail was finally out. "Wait, please, help me, I was wrong." We could hear her cries from outside, but no one paid any attention. After that, we all enjoyed the rest of the evening with our relatives and William. By the time the gathering ended and everyone dispersed, Abigail was still crouched outside. Ignoring her, everyone went back to their own homes. We did too. True to my word, I stopped sending money to Abigail. She was left scraping by on just spousal benefits, eating nothing but beans every day. It's a valuable lesson for someone who's acted so unreasonably her whole life. As for William and me, we upgraded from our small apartment to a nicer one and continued to. A useless freeloader who can't even walk is not welcome here. "What are you doing?" I exclaimed. Samantha pushed me, wheelchair and all, down the stairs for more than 10 steps. Though I successfully broke my fall and managed to avoid any serious injuries. Without offering any assistance, Samantha sneered at me. "You're just a jobless bum, just get a divorce from my son already." "Fine," I replied. Little did she know that I was earning $800K a year. She had no idea about the future that awaited if I were to leave. She even brought my son into the conversation. "Oh, and we'll be taking custody of Ken, too." "No, I won't let that happen." "Stop joking. There is no way that you can properly raise a child." I was determined to protect my son at all costs. I couldn't possibly leave him with this devilish woman. This was when I decided to seek revenge against her. I don't need a home like this, even if they wanted me. A month after I left their house, I received a barrage of phone calls from Samantha. Perhaps she had finally realized the gravity of the situation, but it was already too late. "My name is Shelley, and I just celebrated my 45th birthday last month. I live with my husband and our 5-year-old son. I met my husband, Tom, at a party when I was 35 years old." "Wow, you're a fashion designer? That's so cool." "It's really not all that impressive. I still have a long way to go. I could never do something like that." "Maybe you could be a good designer." "I'm not particularly skilled at socializing, so I must have seemed out of place at the party." But Tom approached me to ease my discomfort. My first impression of him was thoughtful and genuine. My parents have been bugging me lately to be more independent, it's so annoying. You're living with your parents, right? Yeah, but I'm getting up there in age, and they want me to live on my own. Why don't you come live with me? At that time, we hadn't officially started dating yet. I still don't know why I said such a thing, but it just came out of my mouth spontaneously, like a reflex. Maybe I was attracted by something about him, somewhat, being vulnerable and childlike. We officially started dating when he moved into my place. Hey babe! When we have a child, my dad will give us some money. Ha! What do you mean? I don't really get it either. It's like a celebratory thing, I guess. But, I don't know. To be honest, I didn't have much of a desire to get married. I also thought having a child would be difficult, given my age. However, my husband was quite optimistic and seemed excited about the idea of receiving some money. At this time, we had already been dating for 4 years, and I was approaching 40. No way! I was in the bathroom, clutching my head. I also did not plan anything ahead carefully. It seems I'm pregnant. Really? That's great! Then we should get married, right? Yeah! Unexpectedly, on my 40th birthday, I discovered I was pregnant, and we soon arranged our marriage. At this point, my work was on a stable path, and I was willing to invest time for my baby on the way. However, after having our son, my husband's attitude started to change. During the pregnancy, my husband didn't seem any different from before. But, you did really well. What's wrong? The moment my husband looked at our newborn son, he uttered something extremely absurd. Is he really my child? What are you talking about? Everyone in the room froze for a moment at his words. He doesn't look anything like me, does he? You can't tell, he's just been born. Oh well. I'm heading back to work for now. With that, my husband left the room, without looking back. I couldn't accept his words. My husband hardly spent his time with our son and time just passed by. After all, our son Ken had turned 3. Where's Dad? He said he was going to be late because of work today. But you have Mom here with you, okay? Okay. Last year, Tom was here for Ken's birthday. But it felt like he was just there out of obligation. And this year, he claimed to be working late. I am not even sure if he is actually working late. So, that evening, I had spent modest yet joyful moments just with my son. I'm back! I heard the sound of the front door opening. Hi, Tom! Did we have something today? It's Ken's 3rd birthday today. I answered with a firmer tone. Oh, I forgot! I stopped him on his way out of the room. Can't you at least say happy birthday to Ken? Why? He glared at me. It's your son's birthday. Why you don't understand? I'm tired from working late. I'm going to bed. Hey! My husband didn't say a word to our son and went into the bedroom. Of course I was mad, but I was more concerned about our son. I timidly looked at my son and he was acting like nothing has happened. He is only 3, but he seemed to understand the whole situation. It's okay, Mom! He said with a smile, and I could see tears in his eyes. From this point on, I ceased all expectations from my husband. I put our son to bed and sat alone on the couch. Then my husband came over with a smile and said, I forgot to mention, my dad gave us 10 grand as a baby shower gift recently. Oh, when was that? About 2 days ago, I think. So I thought we could go on a trip sometime. That's quite sudden. Isn't it good to do something like that occasionally? I couldn't quite understand what he was thinking, but I accepted the plan, hoping it would bring some joy to our son. And on the day of the trip, we were planning to go on a hot spring getaway. Not even 10 minutes after leaving home, my husband suddenly said, I'm sorry, but we have to cancel this trip. I don't understand. Ken was looking forward to today. Oh, come on! I can't do anything. My boss invited me to play golf. You should just decline. What? Stop giving me orders. You can't even manage household chores and parenting effectively. He snapped back at me for some reason. He even started looking at his smartphone while driving. Stop driving with your phone. I'm just replying to him. Can you just be quiet for a bit? And in the next moment, it happened. Our car drifted into the oncoming lane. As soon as I realized that we were going to crash, I turned my body toward the back seat, trying to shield Ken. Then, I lost consciousness upon impact. Shelly? Are you okay? I woke up to a voice calling my name. There stood Samantha. Where am I? What are you saying? We're in the hospital, of course. I recalled something important. What about Ken? Is our son all right? Samanata replied with a smug smile. The kid is fine. He seems to have only minor scratches. Thank goodness. I breathed a sigh of relief. However, Samantha suddenly became angry. It's not thank goodness at all. Tom has a broken bone, you know? And it's your fault, apparently. What? What's all this about? He told me that you suddenly distracted him while he was driving, didn't you? I didn't do anything like that. I felt anger welling up in me upon realizing that my husband was providing false testimony. I tried to sit up, but couldn't. My arms were somewhat responsive, but everything from the waist down was unresponsive. What's wrong? Samantha, seemingly aware of my condition, grinned. You know something, don't you? I asked. No! I don't! See you later, she said with a smirk. I was overwhelmed by a sudden rush of cold sweat. A doctor had come in right after Samantha left. What he said was beyond my imagination. Will I be like this for the rest of my life? Unfortunately, the chances of recovery are close to zero. So, you mean I'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life? But there must be a way to walk again. We'll provide you with rehabilitation, but there's no guarantee you'll regain the ability to walk. My vision darkened, and I couldn't think straight. It took over a month before I could leave the hospital. During that time, it appeared my son had been staying with Samantha. As for my husband, he never visited me in the hospital even once. Thanks for coming, all the way today. No problem. If you ever need help, I will always be here. You're the only one who says that. But it's surprising your husband didn't come. Well, I kind of expected that. With the help of my coworker Isabella, I returned home. I have a house my parents left me, which I had made accessible in preparation for my retirement. I thought I could manage to live there. Starting tomorrow, my mom will live here, too. Why? Why? It's for your care. I can't handle it alone, and my mom offered to help. Show some gratitude. Even if that's the case, it's so sudden. Stop complaining. You've officially become useless now. You have no right to complain. From that point on, true hell began. What's with this house? It's spacious, but everything is so old. Thank you for offering help. Oh, you're here? I didn't even notice. Well, I will be taking care of you from now on, so be grateful. Samantha said that she would help with my care, but she hardly did anything. As I continued to live this way, I somehow managed to take care of myself for basic needs without help. Realizing that I am able to do things without her assistant, Samantha started to taunt me even more. If you can do so much, I'm not needed, am I? You can handle your life on your own from now on. But it's impossible to do everything by myself. Please help a little. Why should I do that? You can't work, you're useless. I am working, you know. Is that just your fantasy? After this, I decided to take on design jobs that I stopped for a while after the accident. I couldn't stay silent after being berated by Samantha. At times, I was accused of playing around, but I ignored it and focused on my work. My dedication was rewarded, and my work began to earn a reputation. The design you did recently received great feedback. The fact that it was designed for people in wheelchairs was groundbreaking, and it's become a hot topic in the company. Really? I came up with that idea by thinking about what I can do in my current situation. It was just a coincidence. Even if it was a coincidence, it's amazing. Plus, there's a magazine that wants to interview you, Shelley. My younger coworker, Isabella, was more excited than I was. Actually, having my work recognized is a great feeling. After that, I continued to produce new designs one after another, as if inspired by a divine force. With each high appraisal, my income kept rising. My husband seemed to catch on my success somehow. Lately, it seems like your work is going well. You must be earning quite a bit, right? I'm not really making that much. Stop lying to me. I know it. From that point on, my husband started coming to me, practically begging for money. This continued for about half a year. I quit my job. What? Why would you do such a thing? Well, it seemed ridiculous, watching you earn more easily than I do. So, just take care of everything about us from now on. Wait a minute. Oh, and don't tell my mom about this. Why not? Why? Don't you get it? I won't have a leg to stand on if you do that. I didn't press for further explanations. I was too baffled to say anything more. It is indeed absurd to make such a decision for the sake of fragile pride. During this frustrating time, Samantha suddenly suggested something to me. The weather is nice today. How about going for a walk? She said, out of nowhere. A walk? But I have things I need to do today. Those things aren't that important. Come on! Let's go! She pushed my wheelchair, insisting on taking me for a walk. I had never gone for a walk with her before, so I had a bad feeling about it. Where are we going? To a nice place. We've been out long enough. Let's go back. We can't do that. She seemed unusually desperate. She was heading towards a park, on top of a nearby hill. Perhaps due to her age, her breathing had become quite heavy. We've arrived. Isn't this view nice? It certainly is, but I couldn't fathom why she would bring me all the way here just to show me this view. As I was thinking this, I noticed a staircase in front of us. Suddenly, I felt a shock as if the wheelchair might tumble down from behind. It started to roll forward, gaining momentum, and I descended the stairs rapidly with it. The recent memory of the car accident flashed through my mind. I managed to fall back instinctively, but my legs remained unresponsive. I gazed up at the staircase. A useless freeloader who can't even walk isn't needed in our family. Weren't you doing that to me? Samantha sneered, standing at the top of the stairs, making no effort to help me. Her behavior resembled that of a villain in a story. You're just a jobless bum. Could you just hurry up and get a divorce from my son? With that statement, I understood everything. Still, there was no need for her to go this far. Understood! She doesn't know that a jobless bum according to her, is actually earning 800K. She have no idea what the future holds for her if I leave. She even brought up my son. Also, we're taking my grandson, Ken, with us, she said, as if she'd won some sort of prize. I won't allow that. I will be the one to raise Ken. Stop joking! You think you can raise a child in your current state? With that, she disappeared from my view. There's no way I could allow her to take my precious son, especially after knowing what kind of person she truly is. So, I decided on revenge. A house like this isn't worth a word from me. Even if you beg for me to stay. I was unable to get up on my own. I called someone. Shelley, is everything all right? I'm sorry for the sudden call. I need your help. All right. Where are you? I told her my current location and what had been done to me. 10 minutes later, she arrived by car. Are you okay? I managed to drag myself over here, but I'm quite exhausted. I crawled to the nearby bench. Why would something like this happen? It seems like I was really disliked. I responded wryly. This isn't something to laugh about. For now, I'll take you to my place. And so, I ended up staying at Isabella's house. The main concern was my son, Ken. Fortunately, it was only 2 p.m. I asked Isabella to pick him up from kindergarten, ensuring he was safe. Mom! Ken, I have an important matter to discuss. Mom is planning to live separately from Dad. Who would you like to live with, Mom or Dad? I want to be with Mom. I was relieved he chose me over his dad. Now, I had the strength to go through with the divorce. I've made my mind to end our marriage. As expected, my husband called me at some point. Hey, where are you right now? I need some money, send it quickly. Sorry, but from now on, you'll have to figure things out yourself. What do you mean? I mean it as I said. Your mother kicked me out. I'm also planning to divorce you. Hey! Then, a month passed since I left the house. I received a call from Samantha. Thinking she's finally reaching out to me, I answered the phone. Hey, what have you done? What do you mean? Someone is at the house. Oh, I arranged for that. Because it's my house. What? Samantha sounded furious, but I ignored her and continued. Well, you didn't like that old house, right? Oh, and have you heard about everything from your son? What are you talking about? He is currently unemployed. What do you mean Tom is unemployed? Wasn't he working? Your son has been unemployed for a while now. Did you know? I've been covering all the expenses, by the way. I thought you were unemployed, you just had the wrong impression about my job situation. Want me to tell you how much I'm making? Samantha's voice wasn't as strong as before, and it was trembling. I'm making $800K a year. 800,000? That's impossible. You don't have to believe me if you don't want to. Either way, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. I immediately hung up and blocked her calls. I didn't want to hear her voice ever again. It makes my blood boil. I knew they would regret, for the rest of their life, that they let go of me. The thought of their faces full of despair gives me the energy to live even if I can't walk. It took some time, but I finally managed to divorce my husband. Samantha, after learning the truth, demanded an explanation from him. And then he... What? Help me! He begged. It seems like you're confused. We're no longer together. You're on your own. We've lived together all this time. You never helped with our child, and you had only minded your business. Say hello to your mother for me. I hung up, and of course, I blocked his number as well. I cut ties with them, but I'm not finished with Samantha. What she has done to me is a crime. I don't know what legal decision she'll face, but I can't help but feel a sense of excitement, thinking she might have sleepless nights. As for us, even if you move, call me anytime, and I'll come running. Just like last time? I teased. I'm joking, but thank you. Of course. Really? If you say that, then we'll count on you. You can count on me, my son, Ken, and I moved to a new place. It's been a tough journey, but my efforts in rehab are showing results. My legs are slowly regaining sensation. It might take a while before I can walk again, but I won't give up. Because I have my son, and he's the most precious thing. We don't need you anymore. Strangers should just express their condolences and leave. With no regard for the onlookers, my mother-in-law yelled, "Today is the funeral of my recently deceased father-in-law." This woman who typically tormented me took this opportunity to let loose on me more than ever. How can she treat anyone like this with no hesitation? I was the one taking care of my father-in-law. As I struggled to contain my annoyance with my father-in-law, my husband, who was nearby, opens his mouth. You're right. Strangers are just a nuisance. With that, he steps in front of his mother. My name is Michelle Shore, 30 years old. I married my husband 2 years ago and currently live with him and his parents. My husband's name is Mike, also 30. We initially lived in an apartment, just the two of us, after getting married. However, it seemed my husband was an only child and had been quite adored by his mother. The calls from his mother were frequent, sometimes several times a day, even after our marriage. Mike, when will you come live with me? I don't mind if it's just you. Please come back. I'm lonely. You know, the greatest form of giving back to your parents is to just be with them. She would constantly beg for us to live with her like this. My husband didn't take it seriously and certainly had no intention of moving in with her. But one day, his father came to see us. Mike, Michelle, could you consider living with us? At this unexpected proposal, Mike asked with a troubled face, "What's this all about, Dad? You and Mom, you're both healthy. There's no need for us to live together, is there? We are physically well, but it's still rough at times for me, mentally. I may have reached my limit living alone with your mother." What do you mean, Dad? Well, after hearing the full story from his father, it seemed that ever since Mike had moved out, his mother's behavior had been progressively getting worse. She would verbally abuse his father and withdraw money from the bank without even asking. When they checked the balance of the bank account they had been saving for their retirement after a few months, it appeared that she had spent as much as $10,000 without even asking. When confronted, his mother readily confessed but showed no remorse. What's worse, she had no intention of returning the money and started complaining that the house has become uncomfortable since Mike left. Having reached his limits, his father made her swear on a written agreement that if she committed any more misdeeds, he would divorce her. Since then, there had been no abusive words or unauthorized spending, but the relationship between the two had not improved and a Cold War continued in their home. That's why his father was asking us to live with them, even for a short while, to ease the tension in their house. That night, my husband and I decided to discuss living with them. He seemed to think that I would be against it and began by saying, "I understand Dad's feeling, but Michelle, you'd be troubled if we suddenly had to live with them, wouldn't you?" But it's true that your father is having a hard time, right? If there's something we can do, we should do it, shouldn't we? But wouldn't that be hard on you? I'll be fine. Besides, your father is the one who will suffer if we don't do something. We have to help him as soon as possible. Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Michelle. I'll talk to Dad about moving in with them. And thus, we as a couple decided to move in with my in-laws. My husband and my father-in-law came to an agreement and our new life started immediately the next month. My husband Mike always noticed my changes and was someone I could rely on when things got tough. My father-in-law too had a good relationship with us ever since our first meeting during our engagement. However, the one thing that concerned me was my mother-in-law. As I mentioned earlier, she doted on her son Mike, readily. When we went to meet them for our engagement, she only talked to Mike and completely ignored me. Even after we got married and visited their house a few times, she only talked to Mike. When she did talk to me, it was the bare minimum and she made it very clear that she didn't enjoy our conversations. It wasn't that I had a bad relationship with her, I just personally found her difficult. However, since moving in, she was always happy because she got to live with Mike. So we didn't have any major issues, even though she never really talked to me. One day, after about a year of living together, an incident broke out and it turned our life upside down. I got a phone call while I was at my part-time job. It was from Mike, who should have been at work too. "Michelle, listen carefully," he said. "It seems that Dad has collapsed and been taken to the hospital by an ambulance." "What? Dad?" I replied. "I'm leaving work now and heading to the hospital." "What about you, Michelle?" "Of course, I'm coming too." "I'll talk to my manager right now." "Okay, let me know when you get to the hospital." I hurried to the hospital and met up with Mike. When we got to my father-in-law's room, he was lying in bed but turned to us and spoke. "Sorry for making you worry," he said with a smile. which gave us a bit of relief. But then I noticed something odd. I looked around and timidly asked him, Dad, where's Mom? Oh, her. She's at home. Home. Why? I collapsed at home. She didn't even bother to call an ambulance. I had to call them myself. So, she didn't even ride with you in the ambulance? That's right, but don't worry about it. Oh, Dad! The shocking revelation left us speechless. Not only me, but Mike too was turning red with rage. Thankfully, my father-in-law recovered and was able to be discharged after a few days. However, he was diagnosed with advanced cancer and the collapse had left him with severe paralysis throughout his body, leaving him unable to live alone. The doctor informed us that he needed full-time care and we were at a loss for words. When Mike relayed this to his mother, she let out a heavy sigh. She acted as if she was being inconvenient. But Mike and I managed to persuade her and we all decided to work together to take care of my father-in-law. Mike made a good earning, so I quit my part-time job to dedicate myself to caregiving and house chores. Ever since then, my life centered around caregiving. While it was challenging to adjust to something new, my father-in-law always wore a smile and thanked me, saying, "Thank you." When Mike got home from work, he would take over the caregiving responsibilities. This allowed me to finish preparing dinner and take a bath while enjoying a brief period of freedom. We were living each day in this cycle, making it possible for me to continue providing care without overburdening myself. That being said, it wasn't all smooth sailing. When Mike left for work, my mother-in-law wouldn't lift a finger to help. Moreover, she would become irritated when I was busy caring for my father-in-law and couldn't handle all the housework. One day, unable to bear the situation any longer, I confronted her directly. Mother-in-law, could you maybe help out a bit more? I asked. What? Why all of a sudden? You're so full of yourself. She responded. If you don't want to take care of my father-in-law, I'll do it. Could you at least help out a little with the household chores in return? Shut up! You're only our daughter-in-law. The housework is your job. And of course, so is taking care of him. Wait a minute. We've talked about doing our best to help each other out. You decided that on your own, didn't you? Don't drag me into that. I just wish he would die already. I need the inheritance money. Hold on! How could you say such a thing? Your husband is still... Enough! You're a stranger to begin with. The conversation ended with my mother-in-law calling me disrespectful and leaving. I asked her for help a few more times, but to no avail. I also talked to Mike about it, and he tried to talk to her, but she would always play the victim, making it impossible to have a meaningful discussion. To make matters worse, Mike had to transfer her. Upon hearing the news, my mother-in-law gleefully suggested, let's put him in a nursing home. But nursing homes are expensive, and she's not working. Given that my father-in-law is physically disabled but still mentally well, is there really a need to put him in a home? After thinking it over many times, I decided to stay behind and continue taking care of my father-in-law. Initially, my mother-in-law made her displeasure quite obvious, but I didn't let that get to me. Despite Mike's concerns, I stood firm in my decision. However, what I didn't realize was how this choice would bring me so much distress. A few months had passed since Mike had started his new assignment elsewhere. On this day, I was going to meet a close friend who lived far away but was visiting town. I had previously informed my in-laws about this and had arranged for my mother-in-law to take care of my father-in-law for the day. However, just as I was getting ready to leave, my mother-in-law came into my room without knocking and said, "Michelle, I'm going shopping with a friend right now. Could you please take care of the house and him?" Wait, what? I thought I made it clear that you were supposed to take care of my father-in-law today since I'm meeting up with my friend. Oh, is it? I don't remember. That's so unfair. I've told you days before. You're so annoying. I don't know anything about this. Just be grateful that I'm letting you live here, rent-free. But I was really looking forward to meeting my friend after so long. Even a fool like you has a best friend, huh? Birds of a feather flock together. Don't worry. You'll meet them again soon enough. Well, good luck. My mother-in-law hastily left through the door. I broke down crying. Why? Why is it always me? I do the housework and take care of Mike's father every day. Isn't it okay to go out for just one day? This is too much. Just because you hate me, this is too much. A mix of unplaced anger and emptiness overwhelmed me, making it hard to recover. But now that my mother-in-law was out, I had things to do. I wiped away my tears, texted my best friend about what had happened, and got back to the household chores. I prepared the meal for the elderly care and headed towards Mike's father's room. When I knocked and entered the room, Mike's father called out with a serious look. Michelle, my father-in-law, what's the matter? I'm sorry. Because of my wife, your plans got ruined. Ha! Did you hear that earlier? My father-in-law slowly nodded. Then he pulled something out of the drawer next to his bed and handed it to me. My father-in-law, this is. Could you do me a favor in my stead? But are you sure? Yes, I am. It's something I decided a little while ago. Saying that, he pulled out a voice recorder from under his pillow. When the play button was pressed, an unbelievable voice came out. After hearing everything, I promised to fulfill my father-in-law's wish and went to this one place on a later date. But that was the last thing I was able to do for my father-in-law. 2 weeks later, my father-in-law's condition suddenly worsened in the middle of the night. Even though he was rushed to the hospital by ambulance, it was too late and he passed away. My husband, who hurried back from out of state, was not able to be there at the end. Father-in-law, what's the matter? My mother-in-law, who always claimed it was too much of a hassle, left all the arrangements for the wake and funeral to my husband. We held a simple wake just with our close family members, and then the day of the funeral arrived. My father-in-law had started his own company when he was alive and continued to work until the day he collapsed, though he had an extensive network. A large number of people attended the funeral, all showing tears for my father-in-law's death. I exchanged greetings with my father-in-law's acquaintances and waited for the funeral to start. Then my father-in-law, who had been sitting on a chair at the edge, approached me with determination. Michelle, how long do you plan on staying here? Ha! Not ha! Now that his care is done, there's no need for you to be here anymore. Wait, mother-in-law, what are you saying? We don't need you anymore. Strangers should just send their condolences and leave. Without caring about the surrounding eyes, my mother-in-law spit out these words as if making fun of me. At her loud voice, the surrounding people started to murmur. My mother-in-law reached out her hand to me and smirked. Leave your condolence gift and go. At that moment, I felt my blood rush to my head. Who does she think she is? Just leave your condolence gift? We don't need you. This is no joke. How much do you need to insult me to be satisfied? I stepped closer, about to give my mother-in-law a piece of my mind. But the person standing in my way was none other than my husband, Mike. Slowly, with a hard stare at his mother, he began to speak. That's right, Mom. Strangers are a nuisance. My dear son, you think the same, right, Mike? Yeah, I do. So, could you please leave, Mom? You're not my mother anymore. Just take your stuff and go. What? Mike, what are you desperately clinging to her son? My mother-in-law's face tightens into a forced smile. Her voice trembles, her disturbance clearly visible. Mike turns to me, trying to convey something. Understanding his intention, I explain the situation to my mother-in-law. Mother-in-law, no! Margaret, please leave immediately. What did you just say? In your position as a daughter-in-law? I'm no longer your daughter-in-law. I'm a complete stranger. What are you talking about? You're not planning to steal that man's inheritance, are you? You've conspired with him and Mike to do this. No way! All of that man's inheritance is mine. No, it's not anything like that. After all, you're not getting a single penny of the inheritance. With the facts laid out clearly, my mother-in-law stares at me, wide-eyed. For some reason, she grabs my collar and raises her voice. Don't mess with me. Always saying whatever you want. I don't want you deciding the distribution of that man's inheritance. It's your husband's will. Oh, really? And? I don't care about his will. As his wife, I'm guaranteed a share of the inheritance. You won't get it. After all, you're divorced from my father-in-law. What? Yes, my mother-in-law is already divorced from my father-in-law. And I was the one who submitted the divorce papers. That day, my father-in-law showed me his divorce papers. Previously, he had made a pact saying, the next time you commit a misdeed, we'll get a divorce. Out of precaution, he had apparently made my mother-in-law sign the divorce papers. She continued to torment me, even ruining my plans with my best friend. When my father-in-law found out, he was as furious as if it had happened to him. On top of that, she secretly entered my father-in-law's room to steal money, showering him with horrible words like, die already, just pass on and leave the inheritance, etc. These cruel words were recorded by a voice recorder that my father-in-law had hidden by his bedside. Once I finished explaining all of this, the color drained from my mother-in-law's face. In front of her, Mike presented the divorce certification. To my mother-in-law, who was left speechless, I said one last cold sentence. Do you understand? You were long since abandoned by my father-in-law. It's just horrible that you trampled over the feelings of such a kind man. Wait a minute. Without his inheritance, how will I live? You've got to be kidding. Someone as lowly as you have no right to inherit the legacy left by my father-in-law. You should be thankful you've been able to live freely until now. From now on, you'll live a lonely life on a meager social security check. I'll never help you. I hope you suffer more than my father-in-law did when he was sick and struggled to survive. With these words, my former mother-in-law left, crying. The funeral commenced shortly after, but she never returned. After the funeral, I returned home, but she was nowhere to be found. I packed my belongings and moved to my husband's place. Since we deleted my former mother-in-law's number, we have no idea what kind of life she's living now. Even if she were in trouble, we would not help her. Of course, we have no intention of seeing her either. After the move, Mike and I bought a small Christian shrine and decided to place a picture of his father. I started looking for part-time work nearby, and we returned to our dual-income lifestyle. It's busy, but quite fulfilling. Bye, Dad. I'm off now, Mike said. I'm leaving too, father-in-law, I also said and left. Every morning, we do this, paying respects to the picture of Mike's father before we head to work. It seems like the man in the photo is smiling. How many people actually have good relationships with their mother-in-law? I've often wondered about that, given my rocky relationship with my mother-in-law, Mary. Don't get me wrong, I never disliked Mary. In fact, I always wanted to get along with her. But from the very beginning of our marriage, Mary has been bending my intentions out of shape. My husband and I got married 4 years ago. We met through mutual friends and hit it off right away, starting to date. On our 3rd anniversary, he proposed. He's not much of a talker, but he's always been kind and calming, a real rock for me. So when he proposed, there was no hesitation. I said yes, and we happily tied the knot. As for my father-in-law and mother-in-law, I never had any particular thoughts about them. During family meetings, our conversations were always pleasant. No snide comments or anything. I figured we'd just keep a healthy distance and get along fine. Then came our first Christmas after getting married, and that's when the drama started. At the time, I was pregnant with our daughter. While I wasn't showing much yet, I was trying to take it easy because it was my first pregnancy. But when we arrived at my in-laws' house for the holidays, Mary immediately put me to work preparing the Christmas dinner. My husband was busy drinking with my father-in-law, Bob, and didn't notice how I was being treated. Mary had me cooking, cleaning, and running around non-stop. When I tried to rest because of the baby, she would say, "What are you doing just sitting there? You need to know your place. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you can slack off." She would force me back to my feet and keep ordering me around. I followed all her instructions, yet the next set of orders came instantly. So much for relaxing during the holiday break. I never expected our first visit to the in-laws' house to be this exhausting. By the time we got back in the car, I was completely drained. My husband should have noticed what was happening between Mary and me, and it frustrated me that he didn't seem to care. But he had been enjoying his time talking and drinking with Bob, so maybe he just wasn't paying attention to me. I couldn't bring myself to confront him about it. After that, our daughter was born, and during the following summer, we went to my parents' house. My parents live about an hour away from our apartment, just like my in-laws, so we visit them every few months. However, Christmas at the in-laws became an annual tradition, but the pressure to visit them often increased after our daughter was born. It might just be because they want to see her, but for me, it's been a source of stress. Every time I go to the in-laws, I know I won't be able to relax, and Mary will always have some sort of task for me. I knew all too well what I was getting into, and if it were up to me, I wouldn't have gone. But my daughter was still young, and I couldn't just leave her behind. My husband, as clueless as ever, didn't seem to notice that Mary was making my life miserable. The only one who seemed to get it was Bob, but he's practically invisible at the in-laws' house. He never says anything to Mary. Mary knows this, so she doesn't openly harass me when my husband is around, but if Bob is there, she'll make snide remarks. On top of that, she has me prepare meals and then serve them only to my husband and Bob, saying, "We'll eat later. We have chores to do." Then she eats in the kitchen, leaving nothing for me. If a situation arises where we all have to sit at the table, she'll eat my portion of the side dishes and say, "Emma, you said you didn't like this, remember?" Saying so, she didn't give me a side dish. My husband will just genuinely look surprised and say, "Oh, you didn't like it?" I'm just genuinely surprised. Mary turns to him and says, "See, you have to keep track. Emma is so picky, which is nonsense. I'm not particularly picky, and I generally eat what's given to me." But dealing with Mary's subtle harassment had started to feel tiresome. I'd only managed to eat one meal during a 2-night stay. Such things were commonplace. It had gotten so routine that I started bringing my own emergency snacks like sweet bread and cookies whenever I go to the in-laws' house. I would just eat them in the kitchen afterwards since no meal was prepared for me anyway. Seeing this, Mary says, "Isn't it a bit much to bring your own food? Shouldn't a daughter-in-law show some restraint?" She mocked me. But by then, I had learned to tune her out to some extent. Sure, it still irritated me, but I no longer felt like a failure as a daughter-in-law. This continued for several years after my daughter was born, and by the 5th year of our marriage, I was pregnant with our second child. We went to the in-laws' house for Christmas that year, as is customary. But for some reason, my husband was acting a bit strange this time. As soon as we arrived at the in-laws' house, Mary was on me as usual. "Emma, can you help with the Christmas dinner?" That's what I was told. Knowing that helping really meant doing it all myself, I simply said, "All right." Just then, my husband, who usually starts drinking with Bob right away, seemed to have been listening to our conversation. "No, Emma can sit." "Mom, Emma is pregnant with our second child," he kindly said. Even so, when I tried to speak, my husband sharply snapped, "Just sit down." He yelled. I was shocked to see him so furious. It was unlike his usual calm demeanor. However, just as I was about to sit, Mary chimed in. "Look, things go faster when women handle these tasks. Emma helps me every month, so just sit down, okay? Come on, Emma." Unable to do anything else, I ended up being bossed around by Mary as usual. But today was different. My husband seemed off. As we headed to the kitchen, my husband followed. Upon arriving, he asked, "Mom, where's Emma going to sit? You're going to help too, right?" Mary quickly fetched a chair and set it in front of me, saying, "Here, sit down, Emma. You're pregnant after all." She was uncharacteristically kind. All the while, my husband just stood there, silently observing. Although he didn't interfere, he watched us intently. But Mary grew restless and tried to get my husband out of the room by suggesting, "Why don't you go have a drink with Dad?" My husband, however, didn't budge. Our daughter's fussing caught Mary's attention. "Listen, Betty's crying. Go soothe her." Finally, my husband left the kitchen. Immediately, Mary sighed and said, "Oh, I'm tired. Emma, just finish the rest yourself. Stand up. Pregnancy isn't an illness." She snatched the chair from me and sat down. But Mary's relief was short-lived. My husband returned, carrying our daughter. Mary, caught off guard, tried to stand up and ended up falling with the chair. My husband glared at her. "Why are you sitting, Mom, while Emma is standing?" he said in a cold voice. Frantically, Mary answered, "Oh, my back just started hurting a bit. I just switched places for a second." She hurriedly returned the chair to me. Thanks to my husband's supervision, Mary actually helped with the Christmas dinner prep. And we finished in half the usual time. Still, my husband remarked, "This was much quicker than usual, even though you both should be working on this every year." He made such a mysterious comment. Mary, without replying, simply said, "I'm going to start preparing dinner. Why don't you go to the living room with Betty?" She tried to smile as she said this, but her son didn't budge an inch. Instead, he said, "Mom, why don't you want me in here? Is there something you're trying to hide?" Mary was clearly flustered, but managed to stammer, "No, not really." Then he sighed and said, "Call me if you need anything," and returned to the living room with our daughter. Once she confirmed he had left, Mary shot me a glare. "Did you say something to John?" I was equally surprised. I never thought my husband would behave like this. "I haven't said anything. I don't know what you're talking about." Exhaling a sigh, Mary said, "Fine, whatever. After dinner, you'll be cleaning upstairs. You know the drill. You do it every year." After that, I prepared dinner, and as usual, Mary served my husband, Bob, and herself first. But today was different. My husband insisted. We won't eat until Emma joins us, thwarting Mary's plan. So we all ended up eating together. He kept adding more side dishes to my plate. "Emma, you're pregnant. You need to eat well." Usually Mary would give me less food, assuming I disliked certain dishes. But she couldn't intervene this time. "Emma, are you sure you like that? You don't have to force yourself to eat." She tried to snatch the dish away from me. "No, Emma eats what she's given. It's better for the baby if she doesn't have food preferences," my husband said, so Mary couldn't say anything more. After dinner, I usually do the dishes by myself, but this time my husband stepped in. "I'll do it today, Emma. You sit down." He grabbed the dishes from me and headed to the kitchen. Seeing this, Mary whispered, "Letting John do that. You're a failure of a daughter-in-law. Go clean the upstairs." That's what she said to me in a whisper. As much as I didn't want to share a space with Mary, I was about to head upstairs when my husband stopped me. "Emma, where are you going?" I didn't know how to respond. And before I could say anything, he seriously asked, "Did Mom tell you to do something?" No. Before I could say more, he took my hand and led me back to the living room. He looked angrier than I had ever seen him before. Then in front of Mary and Bob, he began to speak. I misunderstood because Emma didn't say anything. I thought she was getting along with Mom. Mary looked shocked at his words. "What have you been doing to Emma, Mom?" he asked. Looking flustered, Mary responded, "What are you talking about? Emma and I get along just fine." "Right, Emma?" She looked at me, seeking agreement. "Well, about that." Before I could elaborate, my husband spoke again. "Every time we come back from visiting here, I notice Emma looking down. I was concerned, but didn't press because you always seem cheerful, Mom. You haven't been harassing Emma, have you?" Mary's face flushed with anger. "I haven't done any such thing." "Emma, did you say something unnecessary?" She lunged at me, but my husband intervened. Enough, he shouted. I've always been treated well by Emma's parents, so I assumed you were kind to her as well, Mom. But Emma looks miserable every time we come back here. It's true that being at my parents' house might make her feel a bit uncomfortable, but that goes both ways. Yet, I've never felt unhappy when I'm at her parents' place. They're really good people. My husband's eyes were filled with tears. Seeing him like that, I couldn't help but tear up too. My husband looked at Mary, who was visibly uncomfortable, and said, Mom, can you really face Emma's parents like this? Can you honestly say you treat Emma well? Just then, Bob stood up and apologized to us. I'm sorry, Emma. I also noticed that Mary had been distant with you, but I didn't say anything. I'm equally at fault. I'm truly sorry. Hearing this, my husband turned to Mary. Mom, you should apologize to Emma too. While saying sorry won't fix everything, it's a start. But Mary wouldn't even look at me, let alone apologize. Seeing this, my husband sighed deeply and said, if that's how it's going to be, Mom, then fine. We won't be coming back to this house ever again. Mary looked shocked. That's not fair, is it? She pleaded. Ignoring her, my husband began packing our things. Mary started sobbing uncontrollably, but no one, not even Bob, comforted her. Let's go, Emma, my husband said, picking up our daughter and calling me. Mary collapsed on the floor, crying, and Bob just sat there, head down. In that awkward atmosphere, we left my in-laws' house. Ever since, Mary has tried to call my husband multiple times, but he's blocked her number. He's cut off all ties with his parents' home and hasn't been back. Instead, we've been visiting my parents more frequently. At first, my parents were puzzled by our increased visits, but they welcomed us warmly each time. My husband often says, Emma's parents are truly wonderful people. I think he feels guilty for the tough times I endured at his parents' home, but I'm not concerned anymore. I have no stress now that we've stopped going there. In the end, I owe my current happiness to my husband's actions back then. I'm truly grateful. From now on, I want to create many happy memories with my husband, our daughter, and my parents and continue to walk a happy